In an era where WWE prides itself on long-term storytelling and carefully constructed hype, Brock Lesnar shattered the mold with his return. There were no teasers, no cryptic vignettes, no rumors fed to insiders. The Beast Incarnate simply appeared, his entrance music cutting through the arena like a thunderclap, and the crowd's roar quickly transformed into stunned silence. His target was clear from the second he walked down the ramp. Bron Breakker, the company's carefully groomed golden boy, the athlete positioned as the heir to WWE's throne. In the blink of an eye, the momentum WWE had spent months building around Breakker was undone, replaced by the sight of the next generation symbol being overwhelmed by the most intimidating figure in modern wrestling. This wasn't about a surprise pop. It was about Lesnar reclaiming his territory, reminding everyone that the top of WWE's food chain still belongs to him. A calculated statement of power. What made this return so unsettling wasn't the speed or even the spectacle. It was the calculation behind every beat of it. Brock Lesnar didn't move like a man chasing chaos or revenge. He moved like a strategist carrying out a plan with the cold focus of someone who understands both the cameras and the psychology of a live crowd. His expression never drifted into performative rage. His pacing never betrayed hurry or hesitance. And his timing spoke to a veteran's mastery of influence. Give fans just long enough to gasp, make every movement land on the production cues, and hold the hard camera's eye so the moment lives forever, in replay. Bron Breakker, who had been sprinting toward the main event tier with youth and momentum at his back, suddenly looked like a man who could feel the narrative shifting beneath him. The first suplex operated less as offense and more as punctuation, an opening thesis that said the comfort era for WWE's next generation was over. Each slam that followed wasn't a tantrum. It was a deliberate rehearsal of hierarchy, a carefully staged reminder that in this ecosystem, power isn't merely won in matches, but asserted in moments, and that one man has made a career out of turning moments into monuments. Breakker as the symbol of a new era. For months, WWE framed Bron Breakker as the banner carrier of tomorrow. Pedigree, explosiveness, charisma that reads in the back row, and the kind of crisp, athletic offense that plays beautifully on modern television. He represented the company's intention to move forward while still honouring legacy, a talent shaped by the past, but not owned by it. That's precisely why Lesnar's choice mattered. By targeting Breakker, the Beast didn't just flatten a rising star, he took a clean shot at the illusion that anyone is insulated from gravity in a business built on perception. Overnight, the narrative flipped from future cornerstone to cautionary tale. And it wasn't by way of an angle turn or a contested title change, it was through the colder currency of presence and aura. If Breakker's ascent had been about proving he belonged on posters, this moment reminded everyone that posters can be replaced, headlines can be reworded, and trajectories, no matter how promising, can be paused by a single disruptive force. The message wasn't that Breakker lacked potential. It was that potential alone doesn't outrank a proven apex. The locker room left shaken behind the curtain. The temperature changed immediately. Younger wrestlers, many of whom have trained in a performance system that prizes collaboration, planning, and consistent reps, watched a different kind of lesson unfold. Hierarchy is not abstract. It is enforced in real time. Veterans nodded with the sort of weary recognition you only acquire by surviving eras, cycles, and alpha personalities. This is why certain lines are never crossed, and certain names are spoken with measured respect. Producers and agents recalibrated their tone in meetings, leaning into reminders about discipline, tempo, and pecking order. Even the loudest voices pushing for aggressive creative elevation grew quieter, not out of fear so much as pragmatism. Ambition still matters, but the room now carries a renewed awareness that one man can reset the mood of an entire week of television. The lesson was not nihilistic, it was clarifying. Momentum is precious, and in a landscape where perception is product, the person who controls perception controls the room. The role of WWE management. What complicates this story and makes it an inflection point rather than a one-night shock is the widespread belief that management wasn't caught off guard. If executives anticipated Lesnar's return and let the tableau breathe, it signals a calculated willingness to let real hierarchy reassert itself on camera. Triple H's public positioning remained neutral by design, but industry chatter frames his private take as pragmatic. A roster full of ascending talent still benefits from the gravitational pull of a singular attraction who can jumpstart ratings, trend lines, and headlines with a single entrance. Critics call it appeasement at the expense of tomorrow. Defenders call it stewardship in a business where the rarest commodity is genuine electricity. The debate lands on a familiar axis. Did the company sacrifice a major prospect's short-term equity to preserve the mythos of an era-defining draw? Or did it stage a necessary reset to remind everyone, fans and talent alike, what real stakes feel like? Either way, the decision underscores Lesnar's unique leverage. He changes not just storylines, but policy calculations. Fans divided, social media ablaze. The WWE universe did what it always does when confronted with a moment that feels too big to be contained by a single show. They picked sides and flooded the town square. Half the timeline crowned the return as proof that no one delivers shock like Brock, that goosebumps are the point, that the business still thrives on a jolt only a few performers can produce. The other half saw a troubling pattern. A new standard bearer cut off just as the torch seemed within reach, and a reminder that the company's future can feel perpetually postponed. In arenas, the split was just as vivid: pops for the icon, groans for the message, and a steady hum of debate. Yet even the critics admitted a truth that explains why the playbook gets reused. Attention spiked. Clips ricocheted across platforms, watch time ballooned, and non-wrestling outlets grabbed the story. In a marketplace where noise is currency, Lesnar's presence still mints coins. Financial ripples and ratings impact. From the business seat, the ledger wrote itself in boldface. Merchandise moved, segment ratings jumped, search trends climbed. Betting lines for hypothetical matchups recalibrated within hours, and partners who monitor engagement in real time saw the curves bend upward. Sponsors weren't wringing hands, they were tallying impressions. Wrestling is art, sport, and commerce all at once, and the commerce piece rarely speaks softly. For the company, a single electric segment can buoy a quarter, sell a PLE, or stabilize a storyline pivot elsewhere on the card. That doesn't negate the creative cost of undercutting a rising talent's aura, but it does explain why the calculus keeps landing where it does. If one performer can guarantee a measurable spike on demand, the temptation to press that button remains evergreen. Lesnar isn't just a character, he's a KPI. Breaker's future in jeopardy. Bron Breaker's test now shifts from physical to psychological, from bump card to brand rebuild. WWE can rehab anyone on paper: wins, showcases, protective framing, but the harder fix is restoring a feeling, convincing the audience and the locker room that the stumble was a chapter, not a diagnosis. That starts with intent. Does Breaker return with sharpened edges, a recentered identity, and a voice that fits main event gravity, or does he try to sprint past the memory of what happened and get tripped by it again? The best rebounds in company history have not been about denial. They've been about demand, pivoting the narrative into hunger and evolution. Breaker has the athletic tools and the TV presence. What he needs now is time, conviction, and a program that lets him confront the shadow rather than pretend it isn't there. If he can turn that moment into motive, he doesn't just recover, he graduates. A message beyond the ring. What Brock Lesnar executed was more than just an in-ring return. It was performance, power play, and seminar rolled into one. His decision to lock eyes with the hard camera wasn't about vanity, it was about pedagogy. He was teaching both the audience and the roster what dominance looks like when stripped of words and drenched in silence. Every pause, every movement, every still frame was deliberate. Officials and peers didn't rush in, not because they couldn't, but because they instinctively recognized that this was not chaos unfolding. It was ceremony. The hush that settled over the crowd wasn't accidental. It was engineered by Lesnar's control of tempo and presence. Casual viewers may dismiss it as shock booking, but insiders recognize the craft, the manipulation of silence, the precision of eye lines, the weight of posture, and the calibration of pace. Danger was implied, not shouted. Intimidation was staged, not overstated. The image of Lesnar standing motionless over a fallen opponent, arms crossed like a warlord who had already won, will outlast any suplex or finishing move. In WWE, as in theatre, the one who bends the camera lens bends belief, and in that moment, Lesnar didn't just dominate his opponent, he dominated the frame, the rhythm, and the very language of the performance. Generational clash. Redefined for years, WWE has scripted the story of succession with great care. The Performance Center polishing prospects, the second-generation stars carrying legacy names, and the promise that the future would arrive through refinement rather than rebellion. Yet Lesnar's return upended that comfortable arc and dragged the narrative into something older and more primal. The lesson was clear. Rites of passage aren't given, they're taken, and sometimes they're outright denied. Young stars don't simply inherit main event slots because it's their time. They must endure the gatekeepers, men like Lesnar who have no interest in stepping aside gracefully. This isn't bitterness. It's the engine that has powered every era of wrestling, from the territory days through the attitude era to now. The industry thrives on the tension between youth, hungry for validation, and veterans unwilling to fade. Breaker's Fall reminded fans and wrestlers alike that the new generation isn't just climbing ladders. They're navigating landscapes patrolled by apex predators who refuse to be displaced without a fight. When a star finally does withstand that gravity, when they not only survive but shift the balance, they become more than just another name on the roster. They become crossover icons capable of carrying stadiums for a decade. Until then, performers like Lesnar remain both obstacle and measuring stick, forcing the next generation to prove itself not on schedule, but on merit and resilience. The Beast as WWE's apex predator. Brock Lesnar is one of the few figures in professional wrestling whose very presence functions as a storyline. His silence carries the weight of dialogue, his entrances reshape the trajectory of entire shows, and his sporadic appearances maintain the aura of a final boss programmed into WWE's DNA. Every time he emerges, the entire roster tilts around him. Critics can argue about whether this dominance stalls the pipeline of young talent, but what they cannot deny is the physics of his aura. The building bends toward him, the card rearranges itself, and every star on the roster recalibrates their ambitions. Lesnar commands a scarcity premium that most performers will never touch. He appears seldom enough to feel special, yet often enough to remain inevitable. That scarcity insulates him from overexposure and ensures that every confrontation carries the weight of a milestone. Facing Lesnar is not just a booking decision, it is a career benchmark. Win, lose, or even just survive, a match with him alters perception. And because perception is the currency of wrestling, Lesnar doesn't need to cut long promos to move markets. All he requires is a ramp, a bell, and a camera that knows when to blink at the right time. In that sense, he's not just an apex predator inside the ring. He's the gravitational force that defines the ecosystem itself. The road ahead. The most unsettling and compelling part of this saga is not what Lesnar did in his return. It's what comes next. If history is any guide, this will not be a one-off punctuation mark, but the first sentence of a chapter Lesnar intends to write on his own terms. The WWE Universe is now left with one burning question. Who will step forward to meet him, and what will they look like when the dust settles? This crossroads carries implications for the entire company. If Lesnar's return is used as a quick jolt of shock value, then Breaker's sacrifice may be remembered as another short-term pop at the expense of the future. But if management allows this story to forge something new, if a challenger can step into the ring, not just survive but actually alter Lesnar's rhythm, then it could become the crucible that births the very star WWE has been searching for. The audience, savvy as ever, won't accept hollow narratives or corporate spin. They want steel, not speeches. They want someone who can look Lesnar in the eye and refuse to blink. Until that figure emerges, the locker room remains quiet, the atmosphere cautious, and every fan listens for that first bass note of Lesnar's entrance theme. The sound that makes time slow and stomachs tighten. Because when it hits, the standings, the plans, and the pecking order can change in the space of one walk to the ring.